What's up? Hello everybody, we're back with an old-fashioned vlog and I'm currently using the Insta360. It's nice to not have a bigger camera now, but just going to do some errands. And today I wanted to talk about how I had my first event shoot and kind of want to talk about my mindset coming into it, to be honest. What happened at the shoot and how it turned out, basically. So I think to begin with, I wanted to talk about the cameras that I used, which was the Sony a6700 and the Fuji X-T5. So I kind of split this project with one of my friends, my business partner, and he did the video. And it would be a worry just because it's his second ever shoot, and maybe he's never done basketball before or an event, but you know, everyone has to start somewhere. So, and he was really adamant on sticking to video, so I let him borrow my camera and I used the Fuji X-T5 for sports photography. And I think initially I had my worries about the autofocus, just because obviously the Sony autofocus is superior, but I really wanted to test it out. But at the same time of wanting to test it out, I wanted to use the Sony just because it makes my job easier. But the only reason why I was so adamant, well, not adamant, the only thing that was tempting me with the Fuji is I think it has better noise control for some reason with the ISO, high ISO. I did have to buy a lens for this. I bought the 18-50 Sigma f2.8. I could have bought a Tamron, but I just really trust Sigma for some reason. I also bought a flash for the club photography. I went out my comfort zone and said I'm going to use the Fuji for the sports, just because I haven't properly limit tested, and I think it's just a skill issue, to be honest, if I'm relying on the AI autofocus. So yeah, I did end up using the Fuji. Obviously the cons are that there's gonna be shots that I missed, but I'm not going to lie, even with the superior autofocus with the Sony, there are still shots that you miss. And I think the biggest thing I enjoyed when looking back on my photos is the fact with the 40 megapixel, I'm able to crop without noise. And if you've ever been to the UK gyms, in basketball gyms, sometimes it's really yellow. It's really, the light's not great, which means if you crop, there will be noise. And when I did a shoot with the Sony for my first basketball, I ended up cropping and there was so much noise. I really enjoyed the basketball photography. I wish I did more video. I think it was such a big project that would have been hard for me to do both just by myself. But maybe, like, as a learning experience, I'll probably get someone that can do photography and videography, so then we can have variations of shots. As Jose was scared to use the camera, the Fuji. Well, he wasn't scared, he just said, nah, I'll just do video. He didn't like photography, so I think that was a downside of the project. And for clubbing, I used the godox TT350F for the Fuji, and I was just playing around with it. It was my first time doing the clubbing photos, but to be honest, they turned out really well. I think if we're talking about what didn't go well was the fact that there was, I guess, a misbriefing, a miscommunication. I think the execution was great, but the briefing, there was kind of a miscommunication with the briefing, which is, to be honest, not anyone's fault. I think the confusion was caused because we went out into the smoking area and people were asking to take, can you take photos of us? And it was meant to be a Y2K night that was hosted by the Filipino Society and the NEPSOC Society. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, are you guys part of the event? And they're like, what event? And it's like, oh, Y2K, the Asian event. And they're like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. So that kind of gave me the impression of the fact that I wasn't meant to be photographing, taking photos of everything that night. But The problem is that didn't just happen once. That didn't just happen once, it happened so many times where people are asking why I'm taking photos. I'm like, oh, I'm doing the event. And they're like, oh, okay. Even though I took pictures of, I thought were random people, they were like, they're not part of the event, so if they can take a picture of it, because they might not get it, they might not receive it. So that's annoying. But again, personally, I think the execution was great. The photos turned out great. And this is the first challenge and what I need to improve on and watch out for later down the line, because it is on me. I could have just asked, but after hearing multiple people say they're not here for the event, and I was like, so I thought I had to be selective in my shots. But yeah, oh well. To be fair, I was nice enough to add on the club event into my pricing package. It wasn't going to be part of it, but I just decided, yeah, that's fine. But at least for next time, it will be much easier, and it's going to be something I take into conversation, especially when doing that type of event. Just to conclude the video, it doesn't really matter what you use. Lens, actually, it does matter what camera body you use. Obviously, if you're gonna bring a vlogging camera to take videos of basketball, you might struggle a little bit more. Maybe stills would work, for example the ZV-10, but you know, when it comes to photography, you can get lucky. Basketball's just lucky. If you're there at the right time, the right corner, anything can work. It's about how you fix it and playing it to your strengths. So, you know, my strength was the fact that the Fuji had 14 megapixels, which meant I was always zoomed out. I was under the basket and I could just crop it and post. Like, yeah, it actually just is a skill issue. Because if you don't know the strengths and weaknesses of your camera, then you're going to have shots that you can and can't use. I'm not saying I'm highly skilled, but it's just the fact that knowing the advantages of the camera I used really helped me. Also, talking and networking with other people that use Fuji, I'm always like, have you used this for sports? If you have, what were your settings? What were your autofocus settings? Was it always on continuous, you know, single shot? Get to know your camera before the event. I was doing testing in my room. It went pretty funny, to be fair. But didn't test the sports, but I had experience with the Sony. And I had the research that the autofocus will not be as great, so I just have to be on point with my camera tracking and pre-AF. Moral of the story, doesn't matter what camera body, as long as you know your camera, its limits, its advantages, create something great with it. Peace.